Hello, welcome to Spread Book Joy. Today I'm doing the mid-year freakout tag, or as I like to call it, a mid-year review. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jack, and if you're not new, welcome back to Spread Book Joy. I've been gone for a while. Life, everything has been really busy. End of academic year as a teacher, and I have got several institutions I'm writing reports and doing things for, and it all just sort of deadlines just all hit at once. So sorry I haven't been around for a couple of weeks, but I'm back and hoping to get back into filming regularly. So this is one that I planned to do a couple of weeks ago. I was tagged by the lovely Leandra over at Leandra the TBR Zero. She's a lovely booktuber who I only discovered in the last few months, and she's really sweet. Go over and give her channel a watch. I'm going to tag her channel in the description box below. Go and support her. As always, try and support newer booktubers. I think she's been doing it for a while now, but she could always, who couldn't use more subscribers? Go over and check her out and see if you'd like to subscribe. I'd urge you to. I was trying to hunt for the originator of the tag because it's always good to find the original tag creator and credit them. But this has been going around for a number of years on BookTube by the looks of things, and the creator seems to have got lost in the mist of time. And if you know who they are and you can mention it in the comments below, then I will of course tag that person if they're still on BookTube. So, without further ado, we're going to go into this. It's nice to do a sort of midpoint review of the year, but it kind of doesn't gel with my principles this year in doing BookTube, I suppose I want to say. So I've been really trying to have a very healthy mindset when it comes to reading and goal setting. In fact, I have one goal this year, and that is to make sure that I enjoy my reading and don't put pressure on myself. So the term mid-year freakout, I know, before we have any sort of comments below about this, I know it's all done in fun and a bit of fun, and tags are fun. But I kind of don't necessarily agree with the language of having a mid-year freakout, because what are you freaking out about? You're freaking out about the number of books you've read or haven't read, presumably, and I am not here for that. I am definitely not here for that. I will go through some of my stats because I think people like to see stats. I'm going to share some of my Storygraph stats, which I never do on here because Storygraph I don't share my profile with publicly, because I do Storygraph just for me, which I'll talk about in a moment as well. But my whole goal this year to not put pressure on myself means that I've not been paying attention to a numerical goal for reading and monthly goals or monthly aims or set things, and I have to tell you, I am a lot happier for it. Last month, for instance, I only read 4 books. And I only know that because I've been writing down the books to record the books that I've, like in my book journal that I've been trying to keep up with. And yeah, I only read 4 books last month, but they were good and I really enjoyed them. And that's why I do reading rambles, right? I don't do monthly wrap-ups. I don't do a May wrap-up or a June wrap-up. I just do a reading ramble every now and again and tell you what I've been doing since the last time I spoke to you. So that's all in an effort to be a bit more emotionally and mentally healthy about things like reading and not putting pressure on myself. So with that out of the way, wait till you get into question 1, because I had some thoughts on that one as well. So question number 1 is, what is the best book you've read this year so far? And that one stumped me, because what do you mean by best? Presumably you mean best rated book, your favourite. So if you've got your highest rated books, which of those was your ultimate favourite so far this year? Whew. Well, there were a few of things, but lots of them were rereads. So, or do you mean best in terms of enjoyment? Because my ratings don't necessarily reflect how much I enjoyed a book, just solely enjoyed it as well. So I might rate a book 5 stars, but there's another book that I would have completely devoured and really enjoyed it, but not rated it quite as highly because it was brain candy, you know? And ratings and reviews, there's load of amazing videos on ratings and reviews, which were done by Scott and Nell over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. By the way, Nell has a new channel, which I'm going to link. Go and subscribe to her. It's Book Hunt, and she is phenomenal, so go and subscribe to Nell. But Scott and Nell had these brilliant ratings and reviews discussions, and how, you know, why are we reviewing? What are we reviewing for? Like, as in rating, not reviewing. I know why we review books. We like to talk about books. But in terms of rating books, like ratings as a, you know, ratings using a numerical value for anything is only useful if you're going to do comparisons and things, right? But then, you know, I used to star rate my books from Goodreads just for my poor memory, but now I review everything I read. I write about everything I read, or I talk about everything I read extensively on YouTube, on social media, so I can go back and look at that. So I stopped rating on Goodreads, aside from NetGalley arcs, which you have to rate. And I do rate on Storygraph because there's a bit more nuanced rating system in Storygraph. But I don't do that because I want other people to go, oh, Jack thought that was a 4-star book or 5-star book. I only do it for me. I do it for me, for me to think about what did I think of that book at that time. And ratings change over time, right? You might not think the same thing of a book a year later or 10 years later that you thought of it at that time. So they're really kind of subjective. They're not a definitive way of saying what I thought of a book. So having said that, a little look at the books that I rated most highly. And one that I absolutely loved was Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes, which is non-fiction, all about, it's classics, it's feminism, it's about women in Greek myth, and she's very knowledgeable, she's very humorous, but I thought this book gave me a lot to think about, and 2 subjects that I absolutely love. So what's not to love? Other things that were high rates for me, Anne of Green Gables, reread. Loved the reread. And what else? Oh yes, Beloved by Toni Morrison. I really enjoyed Beloved this year. When I say enjoyed, can you enjoy Beloved? That book was powerful. And yeah, you can see it was something that I found really affecting, and the writing, the style of it, it really made me think, and it stayed with me. So that's a 5-star read for me, but it doesn't necessarily mean I was an enjoyable read. So best in terms of enjoyment, I have to say at the moment, I've really been enjoying the entire reread of the Sookie Stackhouse books that I've been doing with Ange and Amy for the Out of a Coffin read along, which I'll link in the description box below. I've talked about it loads, but I'm getting so much enjoyment out of this reread of this series. The series is fun and fast-paced and enjoyable and just brilliant for discussion. So I am loving that. So on one hand, I've got things like Pulitzer Prize winning Beloved by Toni Morrison, and then the other hand, I've got, Charlaine Harris's, trashy urban fantasy series. So what do you mean by best? I don't know. Having said all of this, some of the other things that I've read that I've really loved, rather than stand here and list off and reel off all the books that I've loved so far this year, I'm going to answer some of the other questions, and other books I've loved will come up. Best sequel you've read so far this year? Any of the Sookie Stackhouse sequels? That's a quick one. Another one for best sequel is A Storm of Sisters by Michelle Harrison. I've got a review of it. I'll put a link to it. If you don't know by now, it's one of my favourite middle grade series, the Pinch of Magic series, and A Storm of Sisters is the 4th book in the series. I read it earlier this year. I read an advanced reader copy, and I loved it. Loved it. So yeah, I would urge you to check that out if you like middle grade fantasy and you've not read that series. So good. Question number 3 is a new release that you want to read but haven't yet. That is currently Kira Millward Hargrave's The Dance Tree, Young Mungo. And I think that's it at the moment. I'm thinking there's Skander and the Unicorn Thief, which is a new middle grade book, which was a Waterstones Book of the Month. They tend to pick quite good ones, so I quite fancy that. But yeah, so far that's all I can think of. I'm not really a new release kind of person unless it's children's books generally. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And again, I'm going to talk about middle grade because I don't really anticipate much beyond middle grade, although I have seen some over on Gemma's channel. When I'm looking for adult new release fiction, my go-to person is Gemma over at Gem of Books, because she does all the prizes, and she's always doing sort of books that are coming out that she's excited for. But things that are coming up that I'm really excited for, that myself, were Kira Millward Hargrave's next book with her husband Tom DeFreston, one of my favourite middle grades last year. They both collaborated on Juliet and the Shark, and they've got a new book coming out. I think it's about a fox. Might be wrong. I'm going to put the picture up here. The other one is the second book in Imari and the Night Brothers series by B.B. Alston, and that will be coming out soon. I think that's September as well, so I can't wait for those 2 middle grades. But other than that, Gemma, her video, I watched it this morning, and she did like 10 books or 11 books that she's really excited about. And one of them is the Stone Sky? Something Stone. But it's about Medusa, and it's Natalie Haynes' new book. So the best chapter in Pandora's Jar, which I loved, was about Medusa, and so I'm very excited for the angle she's taking with that, because she gave me a lot of food for thought about that character and how she's been portrayed, given the origin story of the character, which I never knew until I listened to that story, so I am in for that. Yeah, so that's coming out apparently in September as well. Question number 5, biggest disappointment. There's a couple. One was The False Rose by Jacob Begelius, middle grade book. It's the 3rd book in the Murderer's Ape trilogy. Oh, it's not a trilogy, they've done a sort of graphic novel prequel, and the first book I love is one of my favourite middle grades of all time. And it wasn't brilliant, I just wasn't blown away, I wasn't as invested in it as I was in the previous books. The other one was Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. I read my first Akwaeke Emezi book this year, and Pet, and I loved it. I didn't get on with Freshwater. I didn't really talk about it much on here because I don't really tend to talk about my DNFs much. If I've DNF'd, it's not really worth talking about a book really, other than because it just didn't work for me. I don't think I enjoyed the style, I didn't really connect with the characters, a little bit too graphic for me. Not that I dislike, I'm not a squeamish person about graphic things at all generally, but I just didn't enjoy this book. So when I realised I wasn't enjoying it, it got a DNF, which is a shame. I do have Akwaeke Emezi's latest release, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I do know that's graphic before anyone says to me, well, that's really graphic. It's nothing to do with, that wasn't the main reason that I ditched Freshwater. I just wasn't getting on with it. Oh, and another big disappointment for me was Anne's House of Dreams. Yes, I love Anne of Green Gables. I've been reading all of the books as part of the Anne along that Emily's running over at Novell Novels. Anne's House of Dreams, yeah, just didn't do it for me. It's kind of like a book too far in the series. I have heard the next one is very good. I haven't got into it yet, but yeah, that was a big disappointment for me, massively. Biggest surprise so far this year is the first book that I put down that I'd read, which was an audiobook of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charles Mackesy. That was the biggest surprise to me because I love the original. The original picture book is wonderful. It's a really beautiful, whimsical, kind of lovely, life-affirming, philosophical, kind of just gorgeous, heartwarming book. But the audio was just something else entirely. And I am really happy for any recommendations from people on picture books in audio format after reading that, because he managed to create, he reads it himself, Charles Mackesy, and he managed to create with sound and original music. He didn't compose the music, by the way, but the original music and sounds and silences and everything else, he just managed to evoke this really emotional journey. And made this into something, just as far as I'm concerned, it just completely elevated what is already a fantastic book. So yeah, that was my biggest surprise of the year. I have MJ over at Reading This Life to thank for that one, because I saw it on her best books of the year as last year. So yeah, that started the year off really well for me. New favourite author, I can only really say one that I'm going to say is a new favourite, because I've read 2 books now and I think I'm going to really enjoy the rest of their work, and that is Elizabeth Gaskell. I've discovered a number of new authors this year, well, new to me authors I should say, who I've really enjoyed. I'm looking forward to reading more by them, but I can't really say they're new favourite authors because I've only read one of their books, and I think you need to read a bit more than that to say that an author is a new favourite, because you have to learn a couple of books to trust in their process and trust in their style, that you're going to enjoy it. But yeah, Elizabeth Gaskell, because I read North and South just recently. I'll put a link to that review as well. But other new to me authors who I've discovered who I think I would like to read more of, Mary Lawson, because I read Town Called Solace, loved that. Claire Fuller, really enjoyed Unsettled Ground. And having just finished Howard's End, I think I'm definitely going to read some more Forster. Next one is newest fictional crush. Don't really have one. There are some old fictional crushes that have cropped up in my rereads this year, in the Sookie books and in Anne of Green Gables, of course, Gilbert Blythe, in Anne of the Island, I think it is, or Anne of Avonlea. But yes, when they get a bit older and they're in college. But yeah, other than that, no, I haven't got a new fictional crush. Book that made me cry, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, which is also one of the books that I've really mostly enjoyed this year. I say mostly, most enjoyable books this year. Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. Ending could have been, it felt a bit rushed to me, but I really loved the story all the way through, and that made me cry. Anne of Green Gables, that always makes me cry. 11, book that made me happy. You can pick any of the Sookie books, they've made me very happy, or Anne of Green Gables, but I'm not going to keep repeating those. But in terms of new books, there are books that just bring me joy, and they're not going to be my 5-star best books of the year books, because they're just books that I read that are heartwarming. And I've just finished one, and it was Away with the Penguins by Hazel Pryor, which is just a feel-good book. It's a feel-good book, and it's got an older protagonist, and I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, that really made me happy. That sort of thing tends to put a smile on my face. Question number 12, most beautiful book that I've bought this year. There are a few. I'm just going to show you them because I can't pick. I love this cover of Quartet in Autumn by Barbara Pym. And Barbara Pym is another new to me author that I really love and want to read more of, and I think I will really love as an author. But yeah, look at the colours on this. I just think it's beautiful. And this stunning hardback edition of Angela Carter's Fairy Tales. Just think it's just absolutely beautiful. And inside it's white, but it's got an embossed cover. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. I hope you can. But yeah, I just think it's a beautiful book. And these two are middle grades, but just with gorgeous cover art. I absolutely love them. This one, October. I mean, look at this. This is absolutely beautiful. Haven't read it yet. And this gorgeous Lucy Strange book, Sisters of the Marsh. This is Chicken House book, and Chicken House always do absolutely beautiful covers. So yeah, absolutely love this one. Books that you need to read by the end of the year. Definitely, I'm not setting any goals to have certain things read, but books that I'm desperate to read, and I am going to read by the end of the year, because I've got one is a buddy read, which is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Now that's a book that I have had on my TBR for the longest time. A friend of mine recommended it to me years ago before I even started a BookTube channel, so it's one of the best books she's ever read, and I've had it on my to be read wish list for a number of years, and then my TBR for a number of years when I had it on my Kindle. I bought myself a physical copy of it this year as well, and I'm reading it with Sandy from Miss Read's Lot in September, and that will happen, and I anticipate that being one of the best books I read this year. I hope it's not going to be disappointing to me. You know when you hype something up in your mind, I really hope it isn't, but I suspect that will be amazing. The other thing I definitely want to get to before the end of the year is Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. I bought that to read in Pride Month. Didn't get around to it, so I didn't actually buy it to read in Pride Month. I actually just bought it to read because I wanted to read it for ages, but I thought, oh, it'll be perfect. I bought it just at the start of June. Oh great, it's Pride Month, I'll read this. Didn't get around to it, but I do want to read that before the end of the year. And of course, all of these amazing, beautiful books that I bought and not got around to reading. Oh, so many things to read. If you want to know some basic stats, I can pop some up on the screen while I talk to you about them. So I will pop up my Storygraph stats. But just so you know, I have set myself a reading goal of 1 book this year, and I met that ages ago. I have read 41 books this year. My moods mostly tend to be emotional, dark, reflective and adventurous, but emotional, dark and reflective being sort of the top 3. Then pace, medium paced books tend to be the winning, medium or fast paced. Slow pace 17%, medium 54%, then fast pace. Chunkers, I haven't read that many chunkers this year, over 500 plus, but I have read kind of most books between 300 and 499 pages, but I've read quite a few short books this year as well. Fiction is totally winning out over non-fiction, which I do need to remedy. My most popular genre that I've read, as always, is fantasy, and that might surprise a lot of you, but last year it was because I read tons of Terry Pratchett, and this year it's because I'm reading lots of Charlene Harris, so and mystery, that's why. So mystery and fantasy are 2 genres that people don't associate with me, though fantasy is my favourite genre of all time. In terms of format, mostly print, and then 22% audio, 7% digital. Charlene Harris, Ellen Montgomery, unsurprisingly, are my top 2 authors. And yeah, 13,784 pages read. If you enjoyed this rambling nonsense, I hope it's not been too long. And if you enjoyed this mid-year review, what has your best book of the year been so far? Have you discovered any new authors that you love? Anything that I've read that you think, yes, that's been a great book for me? Anything that you think I should prioritise for the coming year? Let me know in the comments, and hopefully I will see you again here soon. Bye!